Well, my name is Watanabe. I am from Tokyo University. I'd like to moderate this session in Japanese. The theme of this session is high-level IPR representatives in Asia. And this is really the role of the innovation in Asia. When it comes to the Asia IPR, especially talking about the patent, the first patent system was invented in Venice in 1474. You do not have to show this. So in that sense, over 500 years we have enjoyed a patent system. And 17th century, 18th century, the UK, France, the United States, the Western countries started establishing their own patent systems. Then, with respect to Japan, 19th century, in the Meiji era, a little over 100 years, Japan established its own patent system. 19th century, South Korea, and 1985, China came up with a patent system. So relatively new system for those Asian countries. In that sense, they are latecomers. But these recently new patent system in Asian countries are being actively used. And very rapidly, the system has been adapted. And especially in East Asia region, that the number of the application of the patent is actually more than that of the North America and Europe. And patent disputes are taking place so much, especially in China, and also a patent transaction is very active. So even though there are only a short history of a patent system, now system is being fully utilized in Asia. So the rapid growth and changes of patent system, how are they giving impact to Asian regions' economy and also the markets? We are very happy to have a comment from the prominent researchers in this region. I'm sure that we are going to see more changes in the IPR section in this area, and it will give ramification to the world. So, first of all, I will invite each representative to give their views on their market for 10 minutes. So, 10 minutes. And they have to talk about the role of the IPR on the economy. And you may say that it must be 100 minutes, but it is 10 minutes. So it is a concise way of presenting the situation. The first speaker is from Japan. A professor of the GRIPS, Professor Akira Goto, will be giving us the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Akira Goto, and I'm very pleased that this important and interesting meeting finally came to Tokyo after Vienna and Venezia and Paris. And I would like to thank JPO for hosting this meeting in Tokyo. As Professor Watanabe mentioned, he told us panelists to do the impossible task of talking about the role of patents in each of our countries. But at least I can try. My talk is based on a chapter I wrote with my friend Hiro Odagiri for the book we edited with Dick Nelson. And the title of the book is a catch-up patents and catch-up. And about the role of patents in economic development or catch-up, I think there are two types of arguments. And one is that weak patent is better for catch-up or early stage of economic development because learning or imitation, or to use a more polite word, learning is more important. And strong IPR may hinder the imitation process. So this is a type of argument we often hear. But on the other hand, there are other arguments. Strong patent regime is needed for catch-up. And it is often the case that two reasons are given. And the first one is that patent protection, even in the early stage of economic development, you need patent protection to incentivize domestic innovation. And the second reason is that strong patent will encourage, or strong patent is necessary to attract inward direct investment or licensing from multinational corporations. However, for the second point, the empirical evidence is rather mixed, and they do not support this second argument unanimously. But anyway, there are these two kinds of arguments we often hear. So let's see the Japanese case and how these two arguments played out in Japanese experience. Japan started the catch-up process after the Meiji Restoration of 1867, and it continued on with the interruption of World War II. And maybe I don't have time to speak about the post-war experience, but we'll see. This is at the early stage of the economic development. Meiji government started to build infrastructure such as communication network, railways, electricity network, and so on. And also institutional frameworks such as banking system, commercial code, education system, and so on. And at the same time, patent system was introduced in 1888, trademark law, design law, and the patent law. And this original patent law has a rather unique feature because it adopted the first to invent system. And also all the applications were examined, and application by foreigners are not allowed, and pharmaceutical products are not patentable. And then it was, patent law was amended gradually, and since Japan joined the Paris Convention, the foreigners now became able to apply for patents. And utility model law was introduced. It is often called the petty patents. And also, Japan switched to fast to file system in 1921. And also, in addition to pharmaceuticals, chemical products became unpatentable. And as for the economic development, economy started to grow, and in the interwar period, it grew 4% annually, and heavy industries and chemical industries share within the economy started to grow as well. And patent application also increased rapidly, and just before the World War II, the number of applications was almost comparable. It's much smaller than US and UK and Germany, but almost comparable with France. And let me tell you a little, some interesting examples. And first case is incandescent light bulbs. And Toshiba started to produce light bulbs and started to export it to the US. And then GE sued Toshiba for infringements, and Toshiba became unable to export the light bulb to the United States. And another interesting case, very in a different context, is the Toyota automatic room. The inventor named Toyoda Sakichi. The family name is Toyota with D, and company's name is Toyota with T somehow. But Toyoda Sakichi invented this automatic room, and they sold the patents at 100,000 pounds. And this became the foundation of Toyota Motor Company. So even at the early stage of development, the patent brought a large profit to inventor. And another very interesting case is a company called Nichitsu, which is literally translating Japan nitrogen fertilizer company. And they in-licensed 2 chemical patents from abroad and made heavy investments to improve upon these imported technology. And then they patented this improved technology, and then they started to license out this improved technology with substantial license fees. And then there's a nylon case, and in essence, Japanese company Toray had to pay a large amount of license fee to DuPont. And the license fee Toray paid was really huge, and it even exceeded the Toray's capital or equity, a little bit different, but something like equity. It exceeded that amount. So you can imagine how huge the Toray has to pay to DuPont. And in the post-war process, the R&D grew alongside with technology importation. And technology export also started to grow in the 80s and 90s, and now Japanese became a net exporter of technology in 1990. And post-war case, I'll skip these 2 cases. And in the post-war era, the patent was revised several times, and particularly important was 1975 revision, and which made the chemicals and pharmaceuticals patentable. So in the beginning from the 70s, Japanese patent system was strengthened in many ways. And so to sum up the Japanese experience, Japanese firms' export effort were hindered, as a case of Toshiba exemplifies, and also Japanese firms had to pay a large amount of fees. But in these cases, it was a patent system abroad, the US patent system, that mattered, and not the Japanese domestic patent system. And second point is that technology transfer through license. Japanese companies obtained various type of important technologies through technology licensing. And also Japanese firms invested to improve these imported technology. And also Japanese firms gained by IPR system in international technology and product markets, such as Toyota automatic room case showed. So patent helped inventors to appropriate profits from innovation. And even in the early stage of development, patent protection were important in some cases. So it is difficult to summarize these complex stories. So all I can say is that the effect of patents on catch-up or economic development very much mixed and complicated and very widely depending on what channels and methods are used to acquire and accumulate technology, and it differs depending on industry and depending on the stage of economic development. And also, I would like to say that adequate IPR regime may be necessary, but not sufficient in any way. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for your talk, and also thank you very much for your completing impossible task for summarizing the 10 minutes in effect role of the IPR on the Japanese economy. And next speaker is from China, Mr. Kim, partner of Chinese lawyer attorney at King and Wood Mailson. Please come on the stage and to address. Okay, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Watanabe-san, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It was a great pleasure for me to attend such an important international IP conference because I used to study and work in Japan for years. So today, I'd like to try to make my presentation in Japanese language. ただいまご紹介に預かりました中国の弁護士
Thank you very much. I am a lawyer from China. My name is Chin. It is my great honor to be able to present at this very important IP conference about Chinese intellectual property legal systems. Today, I'd like to discuss Chinese intellectual property regime, how it developed and contributed to the development of Chinese economy. First off, let's take a brief look at the historical development of IP laws in China. There are three stages or phases of development. First was when the foundation laws were established in early 1980s to 1990. The second phase was the phase for compliance with international conventions, which led to revisions of relevant laws in early 1990s to early 2000s. The third stage is the phase of continued development. Yet again, another round of revisions took place. Patent Law 2008, Trademark Law 2013, Copyright Law is in the process of revision right now. Now, the administration and protection of IP in China is described by this slide. There are both judicial and administrative offices involved. Toward the left-hand side, I have listed relevant laws. The second columns indicate the administrative authorities for each of those laws. Administrative authorities are bound by each of those laws on the left. Revisions, ordinances, and drafting of such are the tasks of those administrative authorities. Toward the right-hand side is the judicial authorities, intellectual property rights courts, and other courts. General courts like civil and criminal courts also involved in IP-related litigations. This year, in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, IP courts are to be established in November 6th, on November 6th. We already established one, which had started accepting litigations on that very day. Next is a contribution of China's intellectual property system on the economic development. Once again, I can divide the history into three phases. The first phase is between 1980s to early 1990s. In 1978, reforms and opening up policies were announced, and in 1982, the market economy was introduced into China. With this, China began seeking investment from foreign countries, and as the intellectual property system had to be put in place. Now, the second phase is from 1990s to mid-2000s. The first round of revisions took place because of Paris Convention and other international agreements. The second round of revisions took place for that. After 2008, the third round of revisions took place with the aim of developing the economy to become more innovation-driven and industrial upgrading. Different from the first and the second revisions, the third phase revisions were more active and proactive to bring about wanted evolution in the industry led by the government. Now, let me talk about the government-led intellectual property strategies. In 2007, at the 17th National Congress, the first intellectual property strategy was announced. Innovation-led nation building was announced at that time, and that required the intellectual property system. In 2008, the State Council announced the outline of the National Intellectual Property Strategy for leveraging IP as well as protecting IP, and strategies as well as action plans were announced in 2008. In 2010, the decision of the State Council was made on accelerating, fostering, and development of strategic emerging industries, finding IP to be indispensable in economic development. In 2012, national development of strategic emerging industries were included in the 12th five-year plan, which was approved by the State Council. Average 20% of economic growth was targeted in that plan. This year in October, the State Council issued several opinions on accelerating the development of the science and technology service industry. Networking and internationalizing experts, as well as accelerating developments, were all announced in that opinion. Next is growth in funds statistics. R&D funds in China is indicated. Bars indicate the total R&D expense in China, and the line chart shows the percentage of R&D to GDP. Since 2000, R&D investment has increased dramatically. 2002 and 2013 shows the difference of tenfolds. Now, next graph shows the patent filings in numbers. Once again, you see the exponential growth in 2013. Oh, by the way, blue indicate inventions, red utility models, and green design.
and the total is 2.3 million in 2013. Great number compared to other countries in the world. Next shows the growth in value of technology contract. The total values in bar graphs and the line indicate the value against GDP. Once again, you see the steady growth, especially in 2012 and 2013. We have seen a large increase compared to the previous years. Next is about IP disputes related statistics. This shows growth in annual acceptance of intellectual property civil cases. Last year, we saw 88,000 plus of such cases, the biggest number in the world. Next is economic contributions of copyright industries. Once again, I'd like to share with you some statistics. As you can see from this graphic, the copyright industry's value is increasing its contribution to the economy. Once again, the line indicates its industry's contribution in GDP. The red part is core copyright industry, and the green indicate non-core copyright industry. Now, next graph shows the employment in copyright industry, which certainly is contributing greatly to employment of the country. The bar charts indicate total number of jobs, and the line chart indicates the percentage in the total employment of the country. Lastly, I'd like to share with you some future prospects. Well, there are multiple aspects to this, but my personal view is that the labor-intensive plus capital-intensive was the conventional economy development model. Now we will have to move to a new model of technology-intensive and capital-intensive model. In the past 30 years, low-cost labor was focused greatly, with mass production being the engine of profits. However, currently, the labor costs increasing. Therefore, technology-intensive model with highly value add is imperative in ensuring profitability. Therefore, technology will be the core of development in China to enhance the industry, which is intellectual property driven. Technology-based, highly value-add, made in China upgrading is being called for. And also, the IP property protection also must be strengthened for that purpose. The effective protection is absolutely necessary to create incentives for innovation. Therefore, IP protection has to be put in place to encourage innovation and eventually leading up to social benefits and welfare. The punitive penalty system is now being introduced in patent intellectual property laws. Therefore, enforcement is being strengthened, and also leveraging the IP rights is also important as well. The awareness has been raised with the filings increasing. However, the quality now is of utmost importance because without quality, there will be no positive impact to the economy. And IP holders must realize their IP's economic values in order to make sure that they're being used, so that IP can become a source of competitive advantages. That will once again lead to higher level of innovation and create the virtual cycle of innovation.
はい、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much indeed.
中国の知財
So the history as well as future prospects of IP in China have been covered.
Next speaker is from Singapore. and Professor Wan, he is now a professor of National University of Singapore Business School. Okay, please.
I'd like to start by thanking OECD and JPO for giving me the opportunity to participate in this forum. Singapore is a very small economy compared to the other 4 economies represented in this forum, so I'm particularly grateful for this opportunity. Okay, if you allow me, I will speak from here so that I can read the slide and facing you. Yeah. I have focused my talk on Singapore's future IP strategy rather than the role of IPR in Singapore's past economic development, for the simple reason that actually the role of IPR in Singapore's past economic development has been very straightforward, unlike some of the very complex changes that you have seen in the other economy. Basically, as you all know, Singapore's past economic development has been predicated on plugging into the global trade systems and attracting and leveraging foreign investors to come to Singapore to build up the city-state as a regional hub. As such, given the very small domestic market, the main concern of the IPR system is to allow us to be completely open to the world trade system and to be able to attract foreign investment. So in the word of Akira Goto Sensei, we adopted a very strong IPR regime in order to be able to plug into this world trade system. So I can characterize the past IP development of Singapore in terms of, first, that like other Asian economies, we have developed our R&D investment steadily, and so in recent years, for example, the R&D to GDP growth has been, R&D to GDP has been about 2.5%, and so concomitant with this increase in R&D spending, we have a steady increase in IP creations. But as I mentioned, because of the small domestic market, the main focus is really not so much on protecting the domestic IP, but more of enabling firms based in Singapore to be able to compete in outside Singapore, and in particular in the major economy like US, Europe, and Japan. So the main focus has been on having a strong IPR regime. And secondly, as you can see that despite the growth in R&D, a lot of it is still depending on foreign companies. And lastly, while the IP professional services industry has played an important role in the growth of Singapore as an IP hub, much of this development has been focusing on what we see as basic value adding and not the high value adding services. So just to give you a sense, I'm sorry for this. Okay, so this gives you a chart to show how the Singapore inventor patent have been, as issued by USPTO. This shows you the invention that is based in Singapore. I should note that because Singapore is such a small domestic market, many inventions invented in Singapore are actually not even filed for protection in Singapore. I mentioned about the importance of foreign ownership of the inventions in Singapore. As you can see, more than half of Singapore's IP are invented, are owned by foreign entities, and they continue to be important. And in fact, if you look at the top patent assignee in Singapore, 16 out of the top 20 patent owners are actually foreign entities. representing the fact that foreign companies really play a very important role in Singapore's economy. We did a study on the kind of IP services companies that are operating in Singapore, and basically what this shows is that most of them are providing very basic kind of services and not the very high sort of value adding and the emerging type of IP intermediaries. So this raises the question about what are the opportunities and challenges for Singapore as the growth of IP in Asia is expanding rapidly. As I mentioned, because of the small domestic market, the focus of Singapore now is really on trying to position herself to compete for a share of the value creation around IP in the much larger Asian markets. And to do so, Singapore in recent years have moved on to go beyond the traditional strategy of providing a strong protection regime to become an IP professional services hub in the region. And in this regard, the government has sort of put in place what they call an IP Hub Master Plan. This was started in May 2012, and the report was released in 2013. The recommendation was developed out of two subcommittees. The first on developing a vibrant marketplace for IP transaction, and the second for building a world-class IP capability and infrastructure. I'm privileged to be involved in subcommittee 1. Basically, the master plan highlight sort of 3 major focus and 2 enabling factors. And I will quickly sort of highlight some of the key recommendations to support this. The first idea is to develop a vibrant IP marketplace to be able to attract top international IP intermediaries to set up their operation in Singapore and make Singapore the value-creating sort of a hub for these services. And the idea is also to make it easy for new forms of IP intermediaries, experimental form of IP intermediaries to set up their activities in Singapore to tap the growing Asian market. The second one is about facilitating IP transactions, in particular about introducing financing scheme that will facilitate the use of IP as a form of collateral for loan. As we all know that banks require collaterals in order to lend, and intellectual property is hard to evaluate, so many high-tech companies, for example, find it difficult to get financing from the bank. So part of the key idea here is to really facilitate this. The third idea is to create a strong value proposition to attract IP filings. The fourth idea is to make Singapore as a choice venue for IP dispute resolution. The fifth is to focus on building a globally competitive IP workforce, train the necessary IP manpower to service the region. Next is to enhance the tax environment to attract and anchor IP portfolios and IP management activities. And lastly is to sort of build Singapore into maybe a hub for IP research and for thought leaderships. So these were the goals that were articulated in the IP Hub Master Plan. And very quickly, I just sort of highlight some of the progress that have been made since the last few months. I just want to highlight, for example, the government had introduced an IP financing scheme where the government will underwrite or guarantee up to 70% of the bank loan to company based on valuation of the intellectual property. And of course, we are continuing to plug more into the global patent protection highway network, and also building up a sort of panel of top international IP arbitrators. These are some of the major sort of activities. And the other part, of course, is really enhancing Singapore's ability to do policy-relevant IP research. So in this regard, I just want to highlight, over the last 3 years, I and my center have been commissioned by various government agencies to look into various aspects that are of relevance to Singapore. So, for example, one of the recognition is that we should monitor our competitive performance, not in terms of the number of patents invented here, but in terms of the quality of the patent that are invented here. Secondly is to recognize the importance of software patenting. Software patenting has grown very rapidly, and Singapore sees this as an opportunity for us to plug into it. And thirdly, is to begin to be able to manage and measure our public research and universities by ways to sort of really benchmark their IP portfolio against other leading universities and public research in the world. On that note, I stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation about a very unique approach by Singapore. IP Hub plan is very interesting. それでは次の
Thank you very much. Now let me invite from Korea, Professor Sun Hee Yoon. Professor Yoon is from Hanyang School of Law. He's also the chair of IP Research Group in Korea. If you're ready, Professor Yoon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Professor Yoon of Hanyang School of Law. I've been given about 10 minutes. Only 10 minutes, so I will be very brief in talking about changes in IP systems in Korea, how it has developed. In order to do so, however, the current status of Korea in terms of politics and economy also will have to be described to understand the development of IP against such a background. So what do you think it is in front of you? No one knows this? Well, this is a symbol of our university. Each university has its own symbol, many of them animals. So this is our symbol at Hanyang University, but this is a lion, but as you look at it, it is a hangul of Hang over here, and this one is Yang. We just had a lion in the past, and you could not obtain IP for that, but now this is a trademark for this university. It used to be a mere symbol in the past, but it is now being leveraged in the IPR system as a trademark. Now, I shouldn't be spending too much time describing the backdrop, but the changes of the time and the changes of the technology also brings about changes in IP, from agriculture to industry to information technologies. There are different types of intellectual properties involved in different types of industries in different eras in the past. Now, how has the IP system developed in Korea? I shall go back to the time when it is formulated. In 1908, August, IPR system was established. In 1908 to 1945 is the introductory period of IP system. That's how I see it. And at that time, IP system was formulated. However, the awareness of the general public for IP was far from being very high. The number of filings was small as well, according to Patent Gazette. On June 20th of 1948, there were only 4 patent filings and 6 utility model filings. And applicants are mostly foreign nationals rather than Koreans. And this hat is the very first filing by a Korean national. It's called ka, a hat. And at that time, inventive step was not required for patentability at that time. Now, from 1945 to 1960, I would call this period the confusion period of IP system in Korea. Partly because of political confusion and division of Korea into South and North. At that time, the military regime to replace the parliament with the Supreme Council for National Reconstruction. In 1946, the patent law was introduced. In 1966, a military coup introduced the US type of patent law. And within the patent law, design and utility model were also included. Then the US military government initiated the patent office, which is equivalent to the one we have now, although the name was slightly different. At that time, the society was self-sufficient, mostly agriculture, thus we did not have too many filings either during this period. Since 1960 to 1980, this period was very important for Korea because this is when the IP system was highly recognized and began to grow and develop. I might also call it an era of stability and development. In 1962 to 1986, there were a series of 5-year economic development plans, and that led to rapid economic growth and also Semail movement, new community movement, led the society to change from agricultural-based to industry-based. The number of patent filings increased sharply, and cutting-edge technologies were introduced from abroad. That certainly changed awareness of the public, and the government policies also followed in changing themselves. The IP laws was largely rearranged in 1961 by the military coup government. Between 1980 to 1990, we have seen a very high growth of IP system itself. Together with industrialization, we've seen the higher level of industry emerging, especially in electronics, and exports of domestic goods began in globalization efforts. But rather than the Korean trademark, most of those exported goods were components in OEM arrangements. But this is when Korea joined WIPO and PCT. From 1990 to 2000, I would call it a stable period for an intellectual property system. This is when we've seen rising of the labor cost hike. and enterprises were globalized. Now, during this period of time, Korean trademarks exports began. And this is when the patent filing numbers increased to the level equivalent to the more developed countries. The period between 2000 and 2010. This is an era where the active use of IP system was seen. Because of globalization, overseas production had been put in place in full-fledged. But then that brought about a challenge of hollowing out of Korean domestic production. This is when Korea ranked number 4 in patent filing numbers. But that, once again, is a challenge as well. The number of patent filings doesn't mean much. The more important thing was quality of patents. This era also saw growth in ICT industry, for example, represented by Naver, a major social networking company, which is equivalent to Yahoo, for example, in the States. And now to the present. Apple, Samsung conducted patent wars throughout the globe. So now we are in the period of IP management of enterprises. And the government policies must follow that as well. And this is also an era when the active use of patents and IPs must be upheld. And when we have larger number of patent filings, we'll see higher number of disputes as well. Although I do not have time to go into very much of detail. Now, here's my conclusion. There are internal factors and external factors which have impacted IP system in Korea. Up until 1980, external impacts were greater in changing the IP systems in Korea. However, after 2000, copyright, for example, has been changed because of internal factors rather than external factors. So, together with technological development, Korea should see changes in IP system as well as politics. I wish I had more time, but I guess I should conclude now. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
And surprisingly, not only Japanese, but also Chinese and the Korean businesses value IP, particularly trademark system. But when it comes to the trade secret, they share that the concern that trade secret protection is a big problem in ASEAN member nations. And the balance between trade secret and the trademark have to be, of course, stricken. That's the rising the discussion in Japan. Of course, with the change and the better systems that will be coming to ASEAN member nations, but the management, we also appreciate your view on how to better manage IP and the systems in the future. Thank you very much. Since the question was asked in Japanese, I'd like to answer the question in Japanese as well. Again, this is a huge, the challenging question to be answered within a very short period of time. But I would say first, as I said previously, technology and also the patent system have been developed together, hands in hand, that Japan had such time in the past, but with the acceleration of the technological development, the IP protection became more predominant as importance, but TRIPS and other international agreements are coming one after another. And even with some flexibilities, developing nations are now increasingly forced to comply with these international agreements. And when it comes to the trade secrets, as you asked, in Japan today, protection of there is a growing the voice saying that the trade secrets protection have to be strengthened, and businesses and also the parliamentarians are in agreement for further stronger protection. And I'm a member of a committee which discusses how to do this under the government. One way is to enact a new law, and the other way that we could go is to revise the existing laws and regulations to augment the protection of trade secrets. And perhaps next year at the session of the parliament, the bill will be submitted for the change of the law. Thank you very much. So if all patents become trade secrets, then I think we, participants of the agreement, would face a huge problem. In China, I understand that the patent law is to be revised for the 4th time. So innovation-driven the approach need to be adapted according to your presentation. So about the 4th revision of the patent-driven, so what change do you think, what reform will be necessary in order to drive the Chinese economy more innovation-driven?
Key IP issues in China for next stage would be to improve the IP assets and how to effectively utilize IP rights. In the first time amendment of patent law, it's very interesting that the punitive damage system have been already introduced in the trademark law and this year, and there's a high possibility that the same thing would be happen with amendment law in the patent law and the copyright law. As you already know, because there are many cases, the litigation area arising in China, so many lawmakers think that if we introduce the punitive damage system, that would provide good deterrence for the infringement. Of course, there is another way to think to prevent so many IP infringement cases, just like to strengthen the criminal responsibility. But just in case the innovation, there should be a balance considering the public interest as well as the public interest. So at least at this moment, we think it's a possible practical way to use such a system to encourage, to provide more incentive to innovation activities, as well as to deter the more infringements. Just as I mentioned in the presentation, I think the key issue, IP issue in China is for next stage should be to how to improve the IP assets and effectively use IP assets. Even you hold many IP assets, if you can effectively use them, the competitiveness, the innovation activities, as well as the IP rights cannot be shifted, realized as a competitive market, competitiveness of the market. So this is why we think have to improve the patent as well as other intellectual property rights, the quality, improve the quality as well as the efficiency to use them. Of course, in this stage, the role of the government would be also important, but I think that would be less important than at the current stage, namely the stimulating the many patent applications. For the next stage, the role of the government would be focused on the establishing the rule judged by the market, because the value of the patent assets would be finally judged by the market, not by the government or administrative authorities. Of course, also in the meantime, I think how to improve or establish the commercial commercial infrastructures to improve utilize the patent, as well as other intellectual property rights would be also an important role for the government as a next step. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Should change together with the development of technologies. But IP systems can change because of external factors, especially PPP. So Asian countries may not have sufficient level of technologies, but still see global level of IP systems, which may be a bit difficult to achieve. Korean companies have already globalized. Therefore, going forward, IPR-based management will have to be implemented not only at Samsung, but also Hyundai and other major corporations in Korea. I think it's important to eat. I don't want to be the only person standing between you and your lunch, so I'd like to stop here. Thank you very much. That's true, we've gone over time. But since it was a wonderful opportunity, I really wanted to ask these panelists the questions that I've asked. So today we had the renowned panelists from Asian countries, and I also availed myself of this opportunity to thank the organizers for this opportunity. And once again, I'd like to thank all the panelists.
Thank you very much. This is end of the.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watanabe, and thank you very much to all the panelists.